Hi everyone, welcome to my review of John McTiernan's Die Hard from 1988. So yes, finally here to talk about this film, and here it is, 4K this time. Yes, indeed. Not one of the best 4Ks I've seen. I'll just say that now, but it is on 4K, and I think it's just a wonderful kind of Blu-ray to own. And yes, as I say, finally here to talk about this film for the first time in many years. I've kind of watched this around the Christmas period. I actually rewatched this, a little over a week ago now, and here is the review. The 23rd. I'll try to upload this Christmas Eve. If not, it will be quite a few days after that, because I'm going to be away and stuff. But hopefully I can upload it, edit it, and upload this. But yes, spoilers alert if you haven't seen the film for whatever reason. I guess most people have seen this film at some point, but if you haven't, be warned, there'll be some definite spoilers in here. But yes, this film, indeed, Die Hard, you heard right. Here we are with this film. This is, of course, a film that I wanted to watch, as I say, for the first time in many years, around the Christmas period. I've been, mostly watching this kind of April or May kind of thing, going on here for the last, quite a few years, really. And this is a film that I have seen so many times that I can't count really how many times I've seen this. Kind of since I've a very young age, I kind of started watching this film, and I've seen I've seen all of the Die Hards apart from 5. I don't really care about that one, but all the other ones I have seen at some point. I think, for the record, if you're asking, the third one, with a Vengeance, is my second favourite. I do really like that film actually. I think it's definitely a fun film and stuff, but really the first one for me, this film, is by far the best. And yes, this is, of course, yes, for me it is a Christmas film. I know it's a kind of an ongoing debate that will probably never end, but it is. Some people think it's a Christmas film, some people don't find it really too much of a Christmas film. I think, yes, it is an action film, but yeah, that's the primary thing that this film is, an action, maybe thriller as well in there, kind of thing. But really, it is also, for me, a Christmas film. It's an action film at first, that's what I think of first, but I also do kind of think, the Christmas kind of film that it is. It happens to be, there's too many things in this, including actual people acknowledging this, for it not to be a Christmas film. Set Christmas Eve, of course. LA, Nakatomi Tower, this building, this corporation having this event, of course, celebration. And yes, New York cop John McClane, who, aka one of the best action heroes of all time for me, played by the legend Bruce Willis, comes to this, comes to the building, the tower, to see his wife, Holly, of course. Yes, basically played by Bonnie Bedelia, and she basically goes by the name Gennaro, for reasons, of course, explained in the film, but she is, of course, the wife of John McClane, and yes, basically he goes to kind of to this, to kind of rekindle this kind of relationship that's kind of separated it, for quite a while. It's known to have kind of being distancing themselves, of course, for obvious reasons, them living in different locations, and here he is coming into this tower, and Christmas Eve, and of course these terrorists, although of course they do kind of use that as a distraction. The main thing kind of being they want the building's vault to be opened, so they can take mass amounts of money. They're kind of using this whole terrorist kind of thing to kind of distract the law, and of course Hans Gruber is the leader of these terrorists, German terrorists, and then of course you've got them coming in, as we know, and taking over this building, and it is kind of it's a one location film really, this, and it's just one of the best films ever made. Not only is this my second favourite Christmas film, one of my top, well, I don't know exactly the number, but it's one of my very favourite action films, but it is also simply one of my top 100 films of all time. This is just everything really, that you could want really from an action film. It's one of the very best. It's not quite, kind of top 5 kind of thing, action films for me, but it isn't too far off that, I guess, and just enjoyable in every single way for me. I think just Bruce Willis, of course, one of my favourite actors, Alan Rickman as well. I was truly saddened, like a lot of people, of course, were, kind of with hearing, his death. Of course, it was such a sad kind of moment. But he's been in so many great films, and I think this is, of course, we must know this is basically his first cinematic role. Wow indeed. And this is one of the most iconic characters, just one of the best villains, no doubt. And of course, I think my favourite kind of role he played was, of course, Professor Snape. That's just to me, I think that's the one, that I think throughout all them films, just, wow. And this film, of course, is one of his great performances for me. What a great individual, and I think just this kind of hero versus villain, in this film, the kind of comedy that's used in that as well, is just classic. This is classic cinema here. It really, really is. It's just stunning in every regard. Every time I see it, it just gets more kind of. It thrills me even more every time I see it. It's just one of them films that just all the different details. I think just knowing exactly what happens, the different points. Still slightly surprised, of course, because of the way it's done and constructed, but just every time just getting more out of these kind of thrills, these emotions, and just these characters actually. Of course, John McClane is this kind of this tough guy, of course, Bruce Willis playing him there, and of course you see there's a lot of exposition in the film, really, considering, and of course I just get so enraptured by this kind of this character, the relationship, of course, with Holly, and how he kind of over the course of the film they do basically get back together, kind of thing, or rekindle their relationship. Of course, they're not divorced or anything in the film, but it is kind of one where they are very distant, and they do basically realise across the film, different things, and then of course the ending, as we know, is just one of them, pleasing endings, of course, and just what a film, an action film. As an action film, it's perfect. This thriller, this is one of the tensest, most masterfully constructed, type thrillers, of all time, in my opinion. Just the use of this tower, the surroundings, the way it kind of just goes over this, really mainly this one night, of course, and just it's an unforgettable film. I think I love films, when they're really done well, and they're kind of set over this, maybe a night, or just generally in one location. For example, Rear Window, the kind of just one location there mainly. It sometimes makes for some of my favourite films. I just think this film is just, it's so good, and of course all these different side characters. We've got Sergeant Au, of course, one of my favourite characters, really. Side characters in any film, of course, played by Reginald VelJohnson. He is basically this sergeant who basically happens to come onto this event. Of course, basically the first one to kind of enter the building, to kind of investigate, of course, and basically John McClane, as we know, kind of trying to get people's attention throughout the film, to basically say that this is a terrorist takeover, and of course, it's a very complex film in many different ways in that sense, but also kind of very, very just a simple kind of plot here. Nothing kind of convoluted, anything like this. It just allows the film to kind of do its thing, just as an action film, of course, and everyone involved is just creating one of the very, very finest action films. It's really kind of it's one of the films, maybe not quite as much, but like Raiders of the Lost Ark or something like this, where it just kind of defines, when you think action, what's an action film? How do you do an action film, perhaps? I think, this is definitely, it's up there, in that definition kind of thing. Terminator 2, of course, behind me there. Yes, just perfect definitions, really, of what an action film is, and what it can be, and what, you can kind of aspire to, maybe. I think this is definitely one of them. I think it's just perfect. I think these characters are so good. John McClane is just one of my favourite characters. What a stroke of genius, to create this character, Bruce Willis, of course, to be cast in this role. If this had not been, Bruce Willis here, wow, what a different film it would have been. But in that sense as well, it's got everything going for it. It's kind of of course, the direction here is just perfect. The editing, of course, just stunning. As well, you know, we mustn't forget the kind of the use of music in the film. You know, the songs injected, but of course, you know, the use. Specifically, I'm referring to the use of Beethoven's Ninth. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. You know, using this piece. You know, for me, you know, the Ninth, Beethoven's Ninth is basically the finest. You know, real classical. You know, going back that far, classical piece of music ever. Just in my opinion, I think it really is the piece, the symphony, and the way it's used in this film is epic. It really, really is. I love it how it kind of plays subtly at times throughout the film, and then of course that grand reveal, the lighting there, that moment, you know, after the hour mark, quite a bit after the hour mark, when the vault is opened, you see the reactions, of course, with Hans Gruber and Rickman, of course. You see all these different reactions. The music really, you know, it reveals itself there. That moment there, within the context of the film, just the way it's executed there. One of my favourite moments in cinema, really. Just so good. This is a truly epic film. And as I say, of course, all these side characters are just so memorable, of course. You know, just the, you know, the different... the FBI, of course, that come into play later on in the film. You've got different, you know, tiers of different, you know, kind of the force, of the law coming in throughout the film. You know, kind of the perfect build, really. You know, you've got this structure to the film that's really remarkable. You know, different as more people come in. You know, it's kind of strange how it doesn't actually lose its way in terms of, you know, just the enjoyability of this initial kind of relationship with Al, of course, and John McClane. You know, this is a relationship that starts fairly early on in the film, and of course he communicates with Al to start off with, but you know, even though these different characters come into the film, you know, mass amounts of people, you know, the media gets involved quite quickly as well. You know, it doesn't lose this kind of personal feeling, you know, throughout the film. This initial, you know, just such a warm relationship between you know, Al and John McClane, and also of course Argyle, the limo driver, basically in the opening credits only, but such a memorable character, you know, in terms of, he's in the credits, you know, in terms of his actual dialogue with Bruce Willis, and then of course right at the end of the film. But this relationship as well, you know, is something that's just so enjoyable. The kind of how they meet, of course, and the kind of the comedy in there, and how they kind of form this little you know, quite just such a kind of warm bond there. And then of course he is stuck in the garage, you know, kind of throughout most of the film, you know, at the bottom of the building, of course, and he doesn't know that the terrorists, of course, have taken over until quite a bit into the film, which is just hilarious. And it's such a funny moment when he kind of just realises that, you know, that hearing on the radio, of course, and stuff, and seeing that this tower has been taken over, and you know, he's actually there, but he doesn't realise, you know, this has happened. Hilarious moment, but of course Argyle was just such a great character, so enjoyable in the film, and just so many different side characters. You know, even the other members, you know, of this terrorist group, not just Hans, you know, are so kind of stand out, you know, and Theo as well. You know, he's kind of this. He's maybe the most disturbing character just because of how cold he is, but also I think just the way he, you know, in particular way he jokes about all these people getting killed and stuff, and the way he kind of goes about this kind of plan. You know, it's just really quite. It's such a, you know, wow. You know, it's such a kind of disturbing character. I always pick up on that, and of course, Alan Rickman is just the perfect, you know, performance here of him. The comedy here, also the kind of menacing nature. You know, he's this villain, of course, but very, very comedic villain, and one that is just, you know, so likable as a villain. You know, it's really something else, this film, and yeah, it's just this whole kind of the way that this film escalates, you know, as a thriller, as an action film. You know, it's got these moments that just build and build the, you know, tension. You know, this you know, really is a film to study. You know, to how to actually create tension. You know, to kind of throw an idea out there, how to hold on to that, and how to sustain, you know, that piece of tension to levels that are almost unbearable, and then of course to maybe relieve that, you know, tension at times with a big action, you know, set piece. You know, but the thing about this film is, it's the whole film. You know, the form of it is it's quite remarkable in the way, you know, it's kind of, you could say constant action, also mixed in perfectly with exposition, character building, relationships, atmosphere, not relating to tension, but just atmosphere, and how the music is used so well. You've got comedy in there, not actually breaking the tension, but actually kind of enhancing it as a thriller, and all these, every single encounter, action-wise, the fist fights, the gunplay, of course, in the film, the shootouts, just so creative, so visceral, and so enjoyable. This is a cinematic film, but it's also, very, very, there's such a kind of, a very, very natural feeling as well to some of the action. It's so good. It really, really is. It's just a pure piece of cinema here, in its emotions, the way it just acts as a thriller, as an action, of course. And I just love, yes, quite obviously the Christmas themes in the film. You've got different Christmas songs, of course, ending as well with "Let It Snow." It is a Christmas film. It's got loads of references. To me anyway. It's got loads of great references to Christmas. Of course, the use of the thing in the lift as well. That moment there, as we know, and of course, just the whole idea of this being Christmas Eve, and John McClane, this hero, to stop the terrorists, ruining this, and kind of taking over, and kind of potentially killing people. Of course, people do get killed, innocent people, by this group, and for this hero to kind of come here Christmas Eve and kind of save the day, if you will, and all these different moments in the film. The fact that they don't want, a couple of people don't want the actual lights to go out, of course, because it's Christmas Eve, and they mention about different families losing electric and stuff, and power, for example. It would be, they can't do it and stuff. It does happen, of course, but yeah, all these different things just add up to this, add up and make up for this really such an enjoyable and satisfying Christmas film as well. And it's just such a warm film. These relationships, as I say, that grow throughout the film. The romance, of course, just a great romance. Such a kind of unique way in which it's kind of developed, and I think just when I see films like this, it's just you don't really see the two, John McClane, for example, and Holly, together really throughout most of the film. But it's one of my favourite kind of romances in an action film, at least, because of how well it's kind of set up, and how you kind of feel. You feel these events, the exposition, just very, very subtle at times. For example, when he's on the plane and stuff, and when he arrives, of course, at the tower, and these little subtle moments, just the feeling to it, I think, just adds for, even though they're not really together for most of the film, it just is such an enjoyable kind of romance, and of course, the ending as well, just so satisfying, of course, and just wow, what a film this is. It's such a kind of perfect film in its structure. He saves, strangely, even saving the best action set pieces for the kind of final act, or at least the second half, which is quite unbelievable, because this is constant, pretty much straight away, kind of wonderful action, really stunning action, all these kind of creative ways in which these enemies are dispatched. It's just so fun. It's kind of perfect use of comedy in there, in the action, and kind of, it's a film that also kind of, it's a satire at times of the media, actually, and the law. It really is, as we know, and it's something that just, the way in which this is handled, different characters in the film, for example, the FBI and stuff, and just the kind of ego that's kind of involved there, within the media, and all these different moments throughout the film. It's so kind of, so funny, and so kind of stimulating as well. It's just a perfect script, in my opinion. All these one-liners, of course. It's kind of, it is like a Bond film at times as well. It's got all these different qualities. It just is, it's Die Hard. It really is one of my favourite films, and just, I think, just these great characters, in my opinion. This wonderful action. The heart to the film as well. How actually, it is an action film and stuff, but it has actually got emotion in the film. One thing being, I think the kind of character arc of Al, and the way he kind of course, the tragedy, you know, involved in his kind of story, where he, of course he's not held a gun, used a gun for many years, because of course he accidentally shot that person that he mentions, of course. And in the end of the film, to save, you know, some of these characters, actually he does use his gun, and you know, just kind of, it's a really it's literally one of the last points in the film, of course, but yeah, it's really actually a nice little touch there as well, and how it kind of you know, really complex character, actually, that one, and you know, Al, but the way it wraps it up is just really quite wonderful as well. Very human arc going on there. I think just as well, the humanity to you know, Bruce Willis, you know, his performance, and you know, of course, all these characters. It's so good. It really, really is. Of course, and Hans Gruber. It's just one of the most memorable villains, one of the most enjoyable villains of all time. The way, of course, that he and John McClane don't meet really face to face until quite a bit into the film, and that moment is just hilarious as well. And of course, Alan Rickman does this kind of really campy kind of American accent there. It's just, wow, so hilarious. You know, just this kind of reveal, of course, and you know, then finding out, of course, that is the villain there. You know, that meeting there is just so good. You know, it's just such a great sequence there, and you know, I love how, you know, this character John McClane gets under the skin of these, you know, these enemies here, you know, the villains, and how he does this dispatches of these enemies, of course, and it's kind of you know, off of the main kind of you know, floor where this is kind of locked down, and you know, it's something where he's behind the scenes, for example, but his presence throughout the film is always kind of you know, known by the rest of the characters. You know, for example, Holly as well. They're all kind of their responses, basically, you know, their reactions to how he is, you know, behind the scenes, kind of you know, going against these terrorists, is just so enjoyable. And of course, you've got just so much moments of, you know, comedy in here, and it just is one of my favourite films. You know, the editing, the cinematography, it's all perfect for what it's trying to be, and just the way this escalates, you know, pure escalation. It's just so enjoyable, of course, and you know, all the action in the film is just so exhilarating, so much fun, and it's just one of the most pleasing, you know, kind of action films, or just films in general. You know, Christmas films as well. This whole relationship between Al and John McClane, you know, the hero-villain relationship, and how, you know, of course, as well, Holly, her involvement in the film, and Argyle, you know, all these characters, so many characters in this film that are just so enjoyable, so well written, the performances, so good. You know, Reginald, especially in terms of side characters, he is, you know, stand out. You know, Al, this sergeant, I love how he's the one that, you know, really trusts you know, John McClane throughout the film, and of course it is quite hilarious as well how he calls him Roy throughout most of the film. When he finally learns his name, you know, it's John and stuff. It's really funny. But yeah, you know, I love this bond, you know, in particular, that these characters have, and just the way it all comes together at the end. But all these different characters, you know, that I've mentioned, you know, have a vital role in this. You know, it's this great narrative, actually, and it's not just an action film, you know, and I know a lot of people say that for many films, but it's true. It's not something that's just, you know, an action film, him going about you know, kind of dispatching of enemies. It really is a great piece of cinema, masterful cinema, in my opinion. You know, in its narrative, in its you know, just creativity, and the visceral, you know, just exhilarating experience that this film is. You know, that explosion on the roof, you know, it's one of the best, you know, and yeah, just a stunning film. You know, it's tense, it's funny, it's full of satisfying moments, and it is just one of my favourite films, Die Hard. Very close to my absolute highest rating, and it is one of my very favourite films, but of course it gets an extremely high 100% plus tier 1. Yes indeed, you know, it certainly does, I think, without hesitation. It's one of my top 100 films. It's not quite in that tier S mark, but you know, really close to that, actually. You know, one that just I really love this film so much that, you know, it kind of, I think maybe it's a shame that it's not in that tier, but you know, it doesn't really matter. You know, when it's very close to that, it is in my top you know, kind of 80 or so films, absolutely. So that's all that matters. You know, it is one of my favourites. Always been one of my favourites. As a kid, I have great memories of watching this film, and just, being actually wowed even more, now that I kind of know more about, cinema and what goes into it, and just, I think, the characters, especially are ones that, kind of, I love more and more every time I see it, and it's just a great, great film in the way it kind of is a Christmas film. It really is just perfect in that way, and it's just, this claustrophobic at times, but kind of big, grand thriller action film. I think the way it's just an operatic film. It really is masterfully directed. John McTiernan, of course, he made Predator, etc. But this film for me is just definitely his best film. I think, wow, this is one of my favourite films, and yes, it'd be great to think, great to see your thoughts in the comments as well, and kind of discuss this film and tell us, tell everyone, your thoughts, and what do you think of the film? Kind of, do you consider it one of the best action films? I certainly do. I think it's by far the best Die Hard film. That goes without saying for me, but yeah, it's just as well one of the best Bruce Willis films. He really is one of my favourite actors, as is Alan Rickman. It's a dream film, this really. This pairing, of course, this hero-villain kind of relationship, and Al as well, as I say, one of my favourite side characters of the film. I just love the energy of this film. I love the kind of, in its comedy, but also its kind of its action, of course, just its visuals, and I think just how quickly, this flows, the way that simply this story unfolds, the way the character is introduced, John McClane on that plane, of course, and just from then on, I'm hooked in everything that's going on. It really is, in the way, in the level that I am. It's a very special film, not just for its action. You can just talk about the rest of the film, and actually just being, for me, be really just in awe of it, and how great it is, how perfect really for me it is in a sense of just a narrative, story, how this is told, and how this is so investing and so enjoyable. Every single dynamic, the relationships are just so good, of course. And yes, for the record, the 4K is very, very good, of course. It's great to see some 4K, of course, but yeah, it's not one of the best 4Ks that I own in that sense, in the kind of jump, if you will. Yeah, it's basically, as I say, it's a film that I've seen for many, many years, and it's just so great to kind of watch it once again around the Christmas period. As I've said, it's my second favourite Christmas film. If you want to know my favourite, well, yes, I'll be doing another review of that film, maybe over the next week or so. I'll be rewatching this film that I'm on about behind me here. Yes, It's a Wonderful Life is my favourite Christmas film by far, and yes, I'll be reviewing that film kind of over the next week or so, so I look forward to that. And yes, Die Hard, wow, what a film, one of my favourites, just a pure piece of cinema, really is. Nothing that I don't love about this film. It's all here. It's got every element really working at the highest order for an action film, for a thriller. As a piece of cinema that is just there to enthrall and to just entertain, and also just the way it's made. It's just genius stuff, and all these elements that you pick up on the more you watch it. Just appreciate more and more, and just be in awe of this. This is an awe-inspiring film. It's a hilarious film, relatable characters, warm feelings throughout. It's a Christmas film as well, so that's just an added bonus there. But it really is actually, the more I see it, the more it's kind of, it's more crucial to the film actually. A lot of the areas, within the script, and just the feeling to the film, and the whole kind of the whole kind of narrative. This is just such a good Christmas film, a masterpiece. Die Hard for me is really one of the special films that I've seen. Just is pure perfection in my eyes. Is one of the best films in the history of cinema. One of the best Bruce Willis films. For the record, It's my third favourite Bruce Willis film. Yes, Pulp Fiction and The Sixth Sense. I prefer a little bit to this, but this is up there. Certainly, it's one of the best films ever made in my opinion. And yes, just a stunning, wonderful film. It really, really is. Of course, tell me your thoughts in the comments. As I said, it'd be great to see what you think. And yes, what are your favourite Christmas films as well? What are your favourite action films? And yes, as I say, hopefully this will be uploaded on Christmas Eve. But if not, it'll be kind of before the new year sets in, kind of thing. And yes, as always, thanks for watching my review.